I'll start with just a little background of how I got started and my path. And then we'll talk about some of what Dan mentioned, the differences in radio and TV, some differences between studio and calling games. I hear that you're all doing broadcast and preparing for them, so we can talk about that a little bit. I brought some of my charts for games for football and basketball, so you can pick them apart, maybe steal an idea, maybe tell me something I can do better. The one thing, and then we'll do as many questions as we can, and we'll talk about whatever you guys want to ask, anything you want to discuss. The one thing I will say is that this is a lifetime experiment. You get new ideas every single broadcast, every single day. There's a way you find over the years that, okay, this works for me, this is something I can keep doing, I can keep going to. But honestly, there are times I'll change my preparation based on something I saw, something I heard, an idea. I was looking for something, couldn't find it, and said, wow, maybe if I just put this on this part of my chart, make this part of my preparation, I can find a better way to do this. So I highly, highly recommend not getting rigid in what you do and how you do it. Change, be open-minded. That's one piece of advice. Second piece of advice, who enjoys listening to their own work? Who can't stand hearing their own voice? And like, oh God, you have to get used to it. If you are not your harshest critic, you'll never be good. Because one thing it does, everyone's a critic. I'm sure, has anybody in here tweeted at me that I did a bad job about something? It's very possible. It's very, very possible. I'll share a tweet I'll share something with you guys in a minute here. I'll look through it. I just thought of this. You will be criticized if you do this by everyone and anyone, by the qualified and the unqualified. But everybody is qualified because they are your customers. Does anybody have a mom or a dad who's in the business world? What do they do? Consulting. Okay. How about anybody who has a parent or somebody in their life who's in retail or selling stuff?
My brother's a real estate agent.
Okay, fine. So the people looking for houses are his customers. He has to make sure that he's delivering to them. Our viewers, Dan's listeners, they're our customers. Now, we don't think of it that, okay, we have to cut the price on this broadcast by 10%. It's a sale. We're giving away free information today for a special President's Day sale. But they're our customers. If you can keep them entertained and informed, then you keep them coming back. And usually, I'll say 99% of the time, if Dan and Jim are going to do a radio broadcast of Michigan State softball against Indiana, with no disrespect to the athletes involved, I'm probably not going to put it on my radio in the middle of the afternoon. But because it's a Tiger game and they're playing someone and I want to listen to the game, I'll put it on. Not one person, I firmly believe this, not one person watches what I do because of me. They come to watch the event. And in this world of big personalities in sports and news, especially now, nobody's coming to see you in all likelihood, unless you get to that rare Sean Hannity on Fox or Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. So now we've covered both sides of the aisle, so nobody can give me grief for any political statements one way or the other. They're coming to see them. Maybe Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman on First Take, or Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp on Undisputed, Undefeated, Unwatched. I don't know. It's one of the somethings, whatever. Unwatchable. The point is, rare, very, very rare that they're coming for what you have to say. They're usually coming for what the event is. So what's your responsibility? I kind of used these words a few moments ago. To document the event, inform the listener/viewer, educate them perhaps, especially if you have an analyst who you're working with who is an expert in a sport, and you can perhaps help somebody learn something about what they're watching. Because if you know what you're watching, you enjoy it a little bit more and you may stay a little longer. And the last one is entertain. At some point, these are entertainment choices. We have 8,000 channels and 4,000 different options here to go find something else to do with our time. You're coming to be with us. Want to do a credible job, an accurate job, but at some point want to have a little bit of fun. This is sports. We are not, it's just in the sports world now, and not all of you may go into sports full time, but we are not dealing with nuclear science. We are not dealing with Russian subs off the coast of Delaware. We're dealing with a 2-2 pitch, or we're dealing with 3rd and 7. And at the end of the day, does it matter to the people involved? Yes. Does it matter to the fans? Thank goodness, or else we wouldn't have these jobs. But at the end of the day, the free world will not be impacted by what we do. It's fun. Sports are fun. So come and entertain and have a good time. So that's what we try to do. That's what I've always tried to do. The one bit of advice, which is really all you really care about, is how do I get a job? Once you figured out that you like this, I'm sad to say I have no answers for you. I have some thoughts and theories, and we'll get into them a little bit deeper, but just to give you some headlines, I have no idea. I'll tell you how I got mine, and then you'll realize that there's no way you're going to get your job this way. I went to college at Syracuse. I'm sorry, is that really discouraging? Get your ass in the car, go back to Ann Arbor and leave now. Well, don't waste our time. I got you, I hear you. I can see it in your faces. So I'm a freshman at Syracuse. I was high school newspaper editor, high school yearbook editor. I thought I was going to be a sports writer. The true story is I wanted to be an athlete. And then freshman baseball off season, before we got to the first year of playing in high school, when I was told that I was the 4th outfielder and the pinch runner, it was not very encouraging to my baseball dreams. So that died pretty quick. I said, well, I have a couple options to stay in sports, medicine or journalism. And if you saw my science grades, journalism was the only available option at that point. So I love to write, love to read, and here I was. So I went to Syracuse, and I said, well, I'll probably be a sports writer or sportscaster, because I grew up in New York as a big fan of Marv Albert and Bob Costas, and they both went to Syracuse University. So that's why I ended up going there. Covered field hockey for the Daily Orange, which is our student newspaper on campus, still is. And I went to the field hockey match. Had no idea really what I was watching. I'm a kid from New York City. We don't play field hockey. We have no idea. Covered it, wrote the story, but then went to the college radio station, similar time my freshman year, and we were covering a football game and doing the pre and post game for the football broadcast. And I realized that the excitement of being a part of the event as it was going on and documenting it right before, during, and after was far more appealing to me than watching the event, getting the quotes, coming back home, writing about it. So I went down the electronic media path. College radio for a couple of years, and then in my sophomore year I started interning at the local TV station. Was lucky enough to get on the air and do a somewhat competent job calling Syracuse football and basketball on our campus radio station, which has a bit of a history to it because of the alums that I mentioned before. And what that turned into was an opportunity at the local TV station to intern one night, 2 nights, and then it became 4 nights. So pretty much I was dating the TV station. I was hanging out with the station 4 nights a week, Friday nights, high school football, Saturdays, Syracuse stuff, and all that good stuff. We had 3 weekend sportscasters come and go in about a 9-week stretch. And they finally said, let's just hire somebody young and cheap who's going to stay for a couple of years, even if they're terrible. I fit the bill. I was young, cheap, and terrible. And incredibly, in April of 1987, I got a 4-week on-air tryout. It was the first week I was unwatchable, sweaty, bad, no idea about makeup. I was awful. They had me back for the 11, and they had me back the next day, and then I made it through the 4 weeks, and they offered me a deal, and that's how I first got on TV. I was young and cheap and wasn't going to leave for 2 years, and just gave them stability so they didn't have to spend all their time going to look for another sportscaster to do weekends in Syracuse, New York at the CBS station. So I got my job during my junior year of college, the last month of my junior year, and then kept it through my senior year and worked 2 more years after that. Ironically enough, those 2 years, or that 1 year especially, my senior year, was my best academic year. I have no idea if it's because I was on TV and the professors thought, okay, we'll give them a break, or if I actually made better choices with my time and spent a lot less time on Marshall Street, which is where all of our bars were. So something in between all that, I prioritized my time, worked, and then A gentleman who is now the athletic director at Syracuse, who was my boss at ESPN for quite some time, John Wildhack is his name. He happened to be coming to town, saw me do the weekend sports, went back and told our guys, there's somebody who's halfway decent, young guy on local TV, we should be in touch with him. And they said, send a tape. I sent it. They said, you're too young. Send us one in a year. I sent the next one in 9 months and got hired at ESPN when I was 24, just about to turn 25, and spent 25 years there until NBC. So like I said, there's no way you will get your job that way. It's just a unique path. But if you ask Dan how he got his start in doing this, if you ask anyone doing local sports in Lansing or in Detroit or in Chicago, if you ask any announcer how they got to where they are, it's going to be a different story. Now, doctors, maybe have doctors or lawyers for parents or relatives, you know the drill. Undergrad, law school. You start to clerk at a law firm. You get involved with the firm in some way, shape, or form. Do the apprentice work until you can, once you've passed the bar and go through all those steps. The medical field, we know what that reality is. You go through your different training, your different unbelievable hours of trying to stay awake in the middle of the night and save people's lives and all that good stuff, and eventually you become a doctor, get into practice, do all that. There's a distinct path of how to do those things. There's no distinct path in our business, which is frustrating, but it's cool, because you are not the same as you or you, so you can find your own path. So I encourage you to ask people what their path was and what their story is, and steal from everybody's path to see the ideas that help get you to where you want to go. Stealing in this business is a good thing. You just got to do it the right way. What do I mean? What do I mean by that? People come up with catchphrases in their work. Don't steal somebody's catchphrase, but try to think of one that might be your own if you feel comfortable doing that. Take something from someone's style. Put it in your own personality. We could all wear your Grosse Point, whatever that is, T-shirt that you've had for more than an hour. Yeah. I was the guy who always came to these classes in a hat, didn't shower, showed up in a ball cap, rolled out of bed, right? Welcome. This is good to know it still happens. Somebody can take that shirt, make it look very different by putting something over it, wearing it differently. You put your style and personality, you're glad you wore that now, aren't you? You put your style and your personality into everything you do. But we are all conditioned by the experiences around us. So if you hear somebody on TV or radio and you don't like what they do, that's not part of your portfolio of content, your approach to the job, or your personality. You hear somebody call a game and you love how they do it, then you do that. I'll give you one that I love. Vin Scully, who just retired, the greatest baseball announcer, not in this room, but the greatest baseball announcer of all time, Vin Scully. He had a great knack when they simulcast baseball games, both on radio and TV at the same time. In the ninth inning with one out, and it looked like the Dodgers were going to win, sometimes we wait till 2 outs if it's a closer game, to pretty much tell you the story of the game by picking out 3 or 4 people. So the director, who I got to know a little bit, working with Vin, would follow along. So he would say the first baseman did this. In the 5th inning, so-and-so did this. This is while that last at-bat, or maybe second to last at-bat is happening. And very subtly, you've been told the whole story as it's ending. You're like, oh, that's nice. I wasn't here for the whole game, but I got it. That's a great thing. So I watched that, admired it, spoke with his producer and director, who was actually the same person working on his broadcast. I said, okay, that's pretty cool. So now if I was doing a basketball game and it was getting towards the end, I would work with our director and producer and say, hey, the last minute of this, instead of just putting up, here's their schedule for the next 5 games, here's their stats, let's go back and tell the story of the game. If it's Michigan State up 11 with 19 seconds left and we got 2 free throws, let's talk about this player who did this. Key moment in the game was in the first half when they went on a 9-0 run led by this. Show him. And now you've told the story because people haven't been with you all day. It wasn't the way Vin did it. He did it a heck of a lot better than I did. But it was an idea that was stolen, massaged in our own approach of doing things. And we just felt a better way than just saying, the game's over. Let's just get off the air here. Let's give people something else. Let's keep them entertained. Let's hook them a little bit. So when you're listening, when you listen to Dan do a baseball game this spring or during the year before you're going to call a Michigan State baseball or softball game, listen to something that Dan does. Sometimes it's not going through detail on every pitch, but it's continuing a conversation that either he brought up a topic or he and his analyst, Jim Price, are discussing. Sometimes, and every time during a game, at least 2 or 3 times, Dan will go through the entire visual of the pitcher on the mound, which side of the rubber he's on, from the third base side, works off the edge, working from the set, working from the stretch, a batter who has his socks up compared to his socks down. All those things, those are just parts of giving you the entire picture of it. So listen to that and go, okay, if I'm doing a baseball game, how can I incorporate some of that will help the listener the same way Dan helped me as I was listening to the game imagine the guy who's pitching on the mound or the softball player who's getting set to lead off of first base, describe the lead, wait on her right foot, hand on her knee, hand above her knee, weight on her right foot, ready to run off of first, as opposed to saying Joanne's on first base. All these different things are devices that you would never think of on your own, but as a matter of fact, you've heard them all. They kind of run through your mind. So just some things to think about as big picture approaches to what you're doing. And we'll get to some specific stuff here in a little bit. The number one card, and what we're going to do, these guys are taping for a few more minutes, and then once they're done taping, we'll keep talking the same way, but we'll do more off-the-record stuff. So we can be as honest as possible about things that'll impact you and other stuff. But you guys are fine for another minute or so. Versatility. Anybody play golf in here? A little bit? Good enough. Can you imagine playing golf with 3 clubs? No? What 3 would you play with? Putter? Driver. Mm-hmm. Okay, what are you going to do when you're 150 yards out?
The fairway or in the rough?
I don't know. Do you miss the fairway with your driver?
Sometimes.
All right. What are you going to use then?
Probably the iron.
Yeah, it's hard because you'd use a 6 or a 7 iron. Why do I bring that up? You need to have as many clubs in your bag as possible. The rules of golf give you 14 clubs for a reason, because you can use them all depending on where you are. And as people who are trying to make it in this business, having every club in your bag is really, really important, because as you have seen, it's not just the announcer and the analyst, and sideline reporter. It's everyone. It's director, producer, camera operator, audio person who set up, person who made sure there was power at the venue to use the truck or whatever we're going to use to broadcast the game, engineer who sets up a radio broadcast, every person who got the credentials, person who secured the location for the broadcast. There are so many people who make every little image come through the TV. It's an interesting act. Act is the wrong word. It's an interesting, try to think of the word, experience to go through, maybe, to watch something on TV, put on some live production of something, and then start to think about how many people it took to get that 2-minute segment on TV. We see people pop up on cable news constantly, and they're just talking, and God, they're talking more. There's no more news, just there's one story and 30 people talk about one story. Can you tell I'm sick of cable news? Well, how'd that happen? Is it by satellite? Is it by Skype? Is it by FaceTime? Somebody had to coordinate. Somebody had to coordinate on IFB for them so they could hear the studio. Somebody had to put it in the rundown, find out what time they were available. If they're at a bureau, let's say, like CNN has a bureau in New York or Washington or Atlanta, get that person's security clearance to get in the building. Make sure nobody else is using it at that time. set up the fiber lines, whatever it is. Make sure there's a technician there to put the lights on. It doesn't just happen like this. So just look at something on TV and think about, now that you have a little bit of knowledge of how productions come together, think about how many people made that happen. And I bring that up as a reminder that you can be one of those people. And very often that's the entree to a job you may desire, a quote better job, a job that you're not ready for but you need more experience. Many times people would rather promote the person within to make them the main person, as opposed to going out and get somebody who doesn't know where all the furniture belongs in the room. They don't know the familiarity of it. And then it gives you a great chance to succeed over time and become that next face, that next voice. Your quality always comes to the forefront when you know the process and you do all the little things. So I would say, if you get an opportunity to be a part of somebody else's production, love that job that you're doing. If you're doing prompter, if you're doing audio, if you're running a camera, learn it, love it, and do it, because two things. One, it may get you hired somewhere because you have that club in your bag. But secondly, maybe more importantly, let's say it becomes the day that you're the one on camera and the prompter operator can't get something right. You can tell them, hey, here's what's wrong. I can help you because I had this happen to me. Or you can ask the audio person, can you change this? No, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's the button to the right of this one. Oh, okay. Learn your position, learn how to hit every club in the bag, and it's going to make you a better golfer. It's going to make you more versatile. There won't be things that come up that you don't have the answers to, and you can't help solve those problems and issues. So versatility is the key. If you know nothing about somebody, Dan mentioned somebody who's doing wrestling. Had you wrestled before?
I did.
Okay. If you were going to call wrestling, if you were going to call wrestling here, well, I'm sorry, what's your name? Dimitri? Yeah. You should reach out to Dimitri and ask him about, how did you prepare? What do I need to know? How can I learn? Is there a tape of it somewhere I can go watch? And then you can go do it. Who knows if Big Ten Network's going to need somebody to call wrestling in a year or two, and you've got that club in your bag, right? So the curiosity factor is a must. If you don't have the curiosity factor, then go over to the accounting department and just crunch numbers. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Some people are not cut out for, I want curious, I want to learn, I need to know, I need to find out. Some people don't want that in their life. They just want, do this please right now, and then go do this next thing right now. This business demands, requires curiosity, intelligence, and a burning desire to know why. Why does this work? Why do you want it done this way? Why can this be something of value to people who are watching or listening to what I'm doing? So versatility is absolutely a key. I mentioned constant improvement and being your harshest critic. I'll find this picture now that I took, and I'll tell you a story. So I was broadcasting, let's see, my last game for ESPN. So I did 25 years at ESPN, and then been at NBC now for something like 7 months. My daughter was looking for a picture this morning. She ruined my pictures. I'm all screwed up. All you millennials are crushing me here. And believe me, this is about the last thing I'm going to say about me, because I hate talking about myself. I'm going to listen to what you guys have to say and ask here shortly. So I'm doing my last ESPN event. It was a basketball game. It was in late April or early May. And one of the things that I was talking about before is that you have customers who are listening. I found it. It's great. And I got used to the criticism of fans in this Twitter world. Everybody thinks that you are against their team. Everybody. So, who wants to be my reader here? Come on, let's go. Okay, read these tweets. These are actual tweets. They were sent back to back, and she can vouch for me. They were sent back to back, so I was able to screenshot them. Go ahead.
What happened to the days of non-biased commentators? At Mike Tirico failed miserably. You would think he was on Cleveland's payroll.
Cleveland's payroll. The game was Cleveland against Atlanta, game 5 or 4 of their Eastern Conference series last year. Next one, sent at the same time, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Mike Tirico, so sorry for your loss. Hope the Atlanta Hawks pay you well to be their play-by-play hack.
Thank you. So in the same minute, I was on Cleveland's payroll, and I was Atlanta's paid play-by-play hack. In the same minute. So part of me felt absolutely thrilled because I never had to deal with NBA fans again. It was my last game. It's like, I'm never going to go through this again in my life. This is great. You can all have each other. But then part of me said, you know what? You did a great job.
I was about to say, if you're getting accused of being both teams' play-by-play guy, doesn't that mean you've done your job?
Yes.
That's how I take that. Like,
It does. And when you are broadcasting, you're broadcasting for the Spartans, that's easy. You're really happy when they perform well, succeed, win. If they're losing, you're not all joyous about it, but you have to give it, if you are a true professional, you have to give it a proper, in my opinion, the way I've been brought up to do this, a proper call. You still need to document the event. Listen to Dan call a walk-off home run by the other team. You listen to Dan do it, and listen to Ken Harrelson, the White Sox announcer, do it. His cat gets killed every time the White Sox, somebody hits a walk-off homer against the White Sox. He just kind of shuts up. He shuts it down. Starts mumbling.
and then he jumps out of his seat every time the White Sox hit him.
Exactly. You want, to me, the way I was brought up, you're still documenting the event. You know who your audience is. You're not going to jump up and down and say the White Sox have won the game, but you got to call it fair. When you are a national broadcaster or a neutral broadcaster, which could be the case for, let's say, you call a high school event. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that one of the first things you do calling games could be you are a neutral voice for two high schools, East Lansing High School and Lansing Waverly, let's say, playing basketball. And you're broadcasting the game. Fine, you could be that neutral person. You are three broadcasters in one, because this is the only broadcast that they're going to get of this game. Like, this was only on ABC. This was not on Fox Sports Ohio and Sports South, or Fox Sports Atlanta, whatever the heck they're called now. You are the home broadcaster for the Hawks. You're the home broadcaster for the Cavs in the minds of their fans, because all they're doing is they're switching the channel. One night, Fred McLeod's calling the game in Cleveland for the Cavs fans, and then the next game they're getting me. It's just one button. They're not parsing, oh, you're the network guy, you're neutral. It's their team. Then the third person you're broadcasting for are all the other fans in the country who could care less who wins the game. They're neutral fans. So you're trying to serve three audiences at once. You don't always hit that right. So you should make both upset at some point. And that was a lesson to me that criticism's a good thing. Blind, stupid criticism is something you need to take and brush away. You are going to all come up, if you decide to do this with a public face, in the era of everyone's an expert. We got a chance to make a lot of our mistakes, Dan, myself, anybody in our generation, make a lot of our growth mistakes in a world where nobody could reach us with commentary like this. Every once in a while, there's the rare newspaper column written about the local sportscaster or a TV sportscaster or radio. Not anymore. Now you get constant feedback from everybody. That's why you have to be really confident and self-assured in your abilities and what you do, because that criticism is going to come no matter who you are. But if you know you're doing it the right way, principled, accurate, then you can live with whatever criticism you're going to get. Before I ask you guys about differences in radio, TV, and pass around some preparation stuff, I have a question for you, and I want to see where your temperature is on this. So we'll start back here. How important is journalism in sportscasting right now?
I mean, how do you want me to measure that? Like on a scale of like 1 to 10, or?
I don't know, but you can be a politician. You answer the question with a question. This is for you to drive the content. How important for you? And there is no right answer for this. How important for you is journalism as part of being a sportscaster?
I'd say it's still pretty important. I mean, the basics of everything still comes from that. You still need to do your research on stuff. You still need to know facts. You still need to know how
Interesting.
I think that the journalism that you do with players and coaches beforehand really helps when you're trying to fill that dead space with the anecdotes and during the call. So I would say it's important to keep your audience involved and thinking about what is important to the game and to the results beforehand and after.
That's good. What do you think?
I think it's pretty important because, like they said, you still need to know your facts and do your research. So when you broadcast or something, you don't know, you gotta sound like you know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, and then like Austin just said with the dead space, I think you gotta fill that too, and like talking to coaches and players and doing research on that before the game, and getting quotes on how they're playing or how they're feeling about the stretch they're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that's pretty important.
Good. Yeah, I've heard you refer to the dead space. I know what everyone's talking about. Just remember, when the ball's not moving is the time for you to be great. Everybody, not everybody, most people, when they reach a certain level of competency to put them on the air, they can describe what's happening when the ball's moving. When the ball's not moving, that's when you have to be the best. When a game is great, it's really easy to stay out of the way of a great game. When the game's bad, you have to be better. I would always tell our Monday Night Football crew, I think you've all experienced this a little bit now, and maybe I shouldn't say this. When you're at an announcing position for a network broadcast or for a television production of a broadcast, very often there's two buttons there that your headset is plugged into. The box your headset's plugged into, there's a cough button, and there's a talkback button, so you can talk to the producer or talk to the people who are in the production truck. Whenever we would get to a 17-point or more game on Monday Night Football, I would always remind our group, hey, gang, we got to be better right now. That's all I'd say. And everybody knew finally, eventually, what I was talking about. Because once the game gets bad, you have to be better because you want to keep people informed and entertained and educated. And that's where John Gruden had this line that, again, I've stolen from him. That's where you showcase your preparation. Keep a 17-point game interesting. Why do I pick 17? Because 16 points, as we saw in the Super Bowl, is a two-score game, 28-12, okay? One play, the next play can change the whole game. Now, it was a sack fumble, and they drove a few plays to score. But let's just say that was a pick six that made it from 28-12 to 28-18, and then the two-point conversion made it 28-20. Follow me? In a two-score game, the next play can change everything in the game. In a three-score game, something can happen like that, and now you have time to catch up with the train, momentum has changed, and all that stuff. But don't get too far away from the meat and potatoes for my case, for football, a two-score game. Basketball, when it was anything in double digits, as long as there's not a trend where a team's on a run, it's okay to start going down a path. As soon as it gets to single digits, let's come back here. Let's make sure we're not away from what's going on. Hockey. Anybody play hockey here in high school? What's the most dangerous lead in a hockey game? Two-goal lead. Exactly. Why? But think about that for a second in terms of what we're talking about.
The other team tends to, once you're up 2 goals, you kind of have just a mental breakdown. You sit back a little bit. And the other team, knowing they're still in the game, can come right back at you really fast.
Exactly. The next goal, 3-1 to 3-2. Oh my God, they're coming back now. Or we got them now. No, we've got all the momentum. All those things factor in. It's just a general thought. I always told our guys, we've got to be better when the game gets worse because that is the most important thing to keep an audience to be entertained. So to the point of the dead time, and I'm going to come back to the journalism, the dead time is your time to shine. And that's where all your preparation really shows off. Give me something interesting. Anybody who disagrees with anything they've heard about the role of journalism in sportscasting, and please, feel free to disagree. We're not all here to, sing Kumbaya and be all happy and walk in lockstep. Anybody disagree? I think you haven't gone far enough. I think it's more important than ever because this has no editor. There is nobody sitting there telling you that that's right. Do you think you can take a fact off of a tweet and go with it? We all say that, but do we really believe that? You got to double check it. Wikipedia, got to double check it. There's a certain level where you say, okay, this is a source I trust. And usually what I use for that line of demarcation is somebody checking that source. Newspaper, most things in a newspaper, 99% of the things in a newspaper, although Joanne can say it's a little bit less than it used to be, they get edited. Somebody double checks the facts. If you read something in Sports Illustrated, it has almost certainly been fact checked. It's so rare that something gets through Sports Illustrated without a fact check on every small little detail. New York Times, Washington Post, the failing media, a lot of those tenets are in place to make sure that what they do is fact checked. So there are places you can go. If Michigan State puts out their official stats in their press release, you should probably count on it as being right. You could always source them. Michigan State Sports Information and Athletic Communications Department points out whatever the fact is, if you want to make sure that your hands are clean of any blame. But you should always have a responsibility for checking it. So don't take the facts that you see as gospel. And that's why journalism is still important. The basics of who, what, where, when, why, how, which we all start with in high school newspaper class or anything like that, they all still really matter. And I would argue they matter more now than ever before. Again, I'll go back to Vince Scully. Vince Scully will read a lot of stories about people, and he's down at the batting cage checking on them. I'm sure Dan does the same thing. You read a story about somebody, when you have the opportunity to meet them, you ask them to confirm that. I can't tell you how many times I've come up with stories that were almost right, but not exactly right. Or the player who says, that's not really the way you pronounce my name. A lot of people pronounce it this way, but it's really this. You've got to do your homework. So that's why the journalism process, investigative journalism, writing long-form things, they'll all help. Now, does that make any difference in me recognizing the right defense that a team is playing so I can ask Chris Collinsworth a question? No. But those tenets in place are what you have to have as a foundation to work off of every day. So do not think that you're not a journalist.